When my wife told me she was going back to her ex, she didn't even flinch. 15 years together, and she said it like she was confirming a dinner reservation. "I never really loved you," she added, her tone so casual it almost felt rehearsed. I just nodded. The next day, her lawyer called, voice trembling. "The house, the accounts. My God, what did you tell her last night?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That our anniversary dinner, grilled salmon, candles, quiet music, had turned into a scene I still can't fully process? 15 years reduced to a disposable line between bites. Carla looked peaceful when she said it, almost relieved, like she'd been practicing that sentence in the mirror for weeks. She had it all planned, the timing, the outfit, even sending our daughter away for the weekend. She chose the exact moment to perform her little confession. The execution was flawless. I had to give her that. I remember setting down my fork, folding my napkin, and saying, "Then you should leave." No shouting, no begging, no dramatic collapse. Just that. The air between us went still. She blinked, waiting for the reaction she'd built her script around. She wanted chaos, tears, maybe a scene she could tell her friends about later. But I didn't give her that. I gave her nothing. And that silence, it broke something in her. Because for the first time, she didn't recognize the man sitting across from her. She'd spent years underestimating me, assuming I'd always play the quiet, dependable husband. But that night, she met someone else entirely. Back home, she stomped around like a teenager performing heartbreak, packing with unnecessary noise, laughing too loudly on the phone with her ex. That man's voice, God, it sounded like a clogged drain. She dragged her suitcase through the hallway, pausing long enough to smirk at me. "I guess I'll finally get half of everything," she said. I didn't respond. I just leaned against the kitchen doorframe and watched her leave the life she thought she understood. She believed she just detonated a bomb. What she didn't know was that I'd lit the fuse 7 years ago. Before I go on, and trust me, it gets better, there's something you should know. When people hear stories like this, most never subscribe. But that small gesture, it keeps this whole project going. So if you're still reading, consider it. It helps more than you think. Anyway, I stayed in the kitchen, not grieving, not replaying memories. I was reviewing protocols. When Carla said half of everything, what she really meant was half of what she thought existed. She had no idea about the trust, about the shell entities, the automatic transfers triggered the moment a spouse voluntarily leaves the marital home. She jumped from the plane, confident in her parachute, not realizing I'd quietly switched the pull cord years ago. I went to my office, turned on the light, and opened a small black box I hadn't touched in ages. Inside was a USB drive, notarized documents, the original post-nuptial agreement, and a single unsigned activation letter. Until now. I sat down, took out my pen, and wrote one sentence. At 10:47 p.m., spouse Carla Whitman has voluntarily vacated the shared residence with intent to end the marriage. Clause 7, you activated signature, date, upload, encrypt. By the time her Uber pulled out of the driveway, she was already a guest in a world that no longer belonged to her. She thought she'd humiliated me, that she'd left me broken. What she'd actually done was trigger the one game I play better than anyone, structure. And tomorrow the first move would begin. The door didn't slam when she left. It clicked. Quiet. Final. Like a vault ceiling shut. I waited 13 seconds after the sound faded, just long enough to hear the crunch of gravel as her Uber turned onto the street. Then I went to my study. Not out of rage, not even sadness. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The desk lamp hummed to life with a warm glow, steady and familiar. Everything she wasn't. My laptop booted up, decrypting local keys, confirming my fingerprint. The desktop loaded like it had been waiting for this exact moment. In a way, it had. For 7 years, I'd been quietly building contingencies, like a man stacking sandbags long before the storm. Carla always joked that I was obsessive about paperwork because I liked to control, that I was old school, boring. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't just filing papers. I was building a fortress. I opened a private encrypted diagram on my desktop, my asset tree. It looked like a spider web designed by a lawyer with OCD. Every LLC, Every holding company, every silent partnership, all legal, all mine, just waiting for one specific trigger to come alive. I found it. Clause 7U, spousal abandonment. The rule was simple. If a spouse voluntarily leaves the marital home with intent to dissolve the marriage, the system isolates assets. Property titles shift to a holding entity. The departing spouse's access is revoked, and the post-nuptial agreement seals it all. All I had to do was click execute. So I did. No fanfare, no cinematic sound, just a small green bar moving quietly across the screen. Within seconds, Bitmark Holdings LLC became the new official owner of our home. Carla's name was gone. The brokerage accounts, reassigned. Her car, the one I gave her last birthday, was now registered under a corporate fleet title. Good luck convincing an insurance company she owns a vehicle that no longer matches its VIN. The truth was, every shiny piece of our shared life had always been mine. She never asked how the mortgage disappeared or how our vacation house by the lake was technically a timeshare. She thought I was afraid of chaos. She never realized I'd been preparing for betrayal. I unlocked the second safe and took out a sealed envelope labeled CW Activation. Inside, the original postnup, a notarized affidavit, a USB of timestamp logs, and a final letter to her lawyer. I added 3 quiet words at the bottom. Let us proceed accordingly. I signed it, sealed it, and dropped it in the outbox. Then I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I'd imagined this night for years, but when it finally came, it didn't feel like victory. Just silence. A strange, hollow quiet. Like when a loud appliance suddenly stops and you realize how much noise it made. For 15 years, Carla filled every inch of space with little sighs, little complaints, tiny storms. Now there was just stillness and room to think. I checked every protocol one by one. Primary residence, reassigned. Accounts, redirected. Liabilities, nullified. Digital access, locked. She could still use Netflix. I wasn't heartless, just precise. A few minutes before midnight, I typed one last command. Notify attorney, structure active. My lawyer's phone would buzz at exactly 8:01 a.m., not a second sooner. By then, he'd have everything. The signed documents, logs, and the door camera footage of her leaving. No drama, just data. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was architecture. Tomorrow she'd come swinging, trying to draw blood, and she'd realize the knives were no longer hers. The next morning, as I made coffee, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text or call, just an alert from a social monitoring tool I'd set up years ago when I worked in corporate auditing. I'd forgotten her name was still on the list. And there it was, a new public post. A photo of Carla wrapped around her ex, Steven, the walking midlife crisis. His arm around her like she was a trophy, both holding champagne glasses, smiling like high schoolers playing grown-up. Caption, true love always finds its way back. Cheers to finally being free, posted at 9:27 a.m. I stared at the timestamp, not because it hurt, but because of what it meant. 9:27 a.m. yesterday. 3 hours before our anniversary dinner. Before the salmon. Before I never really loved you. Before she even sat across from me, pretending she still lived here. She'd taken that picture while I was picking up roses. The same roses she smelled at dinner before twisting the knife. That post wasn't just tacky, it was evidence. I opened the postnup and scrolled to clause 9B, premeditated abandonment with intent to defraud. It stated that if a spouse's intention to leave could be proven before the announcement, and if that intent involved another relationship, they forfeited all rights to shared property. My lawyer had added it years ago with one question. What if she's already gone, just staying for the payout? Evidence, the clause said, could include time-stamped third-party behavior, like, say, a selfie with an ex. I downloaded the image, extracted the metadata, GPS, device, timestamp, uploaded it all to the protection log. Violation confirmed. The structure I'd built wasn't just a shield anymore. It had teeth. She thought she'd been celebrating freedom. What she'd actually done was sign a confession. I forwarded the file to my lawyer with one subject line. Clause 9B, activation, no message body, he'd know what it meant. Then I checked the comments. 37 likes, heart emojis. Her best friend Michelle wrote, "You deserve happiness. Told you he'd come back." Michelle, the same woman who borrowed $5,000 from me for dental work and ghosted me. Of course. Then another comment from Carla's hairdresser. "Wait, is this from yesterday morning? Thought you said you were still deciding what to do." Carla replied, "Ha ha ha, shh, don't out me." Out you? Oh honey, I thought, you already did that yourself. I took a screenshot, printed it, underlined the words "don't out me." My lawyer would enjoy that detail. The coffee steamed quietly beside me. Somewhere out there, Carla was probably sipping mimosas, thinking she'd escaped the dull man she'd outgrown. She had no idea what she'd just triggered. People think betrayal is about sex or messages. It's not. It's about intent. That's what Clause 9b was built for, to catch intent. And now the trail was hers, not mine. Not Stephen's. Hers. Her post. Her timestamp. Her lie and her fall. It wouldn't happen today. Precision doesn't rush. But it would come. Because in my world, the most dangerous kind of liar is the one arrogant enough to leave a timestamp on her own crime. The call came that afternoon. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Downtown law firm. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mr. Whitman?" The voice was smooth, confident, young enough to still believe in fairness. "This is Tyler Preston, the attorney representing your wife, Carla Whitman. I just wanted to reach out before we file." I sipped my coffee. "Go ahead. We'll be filing for divorce, irreconcilable differences. Naturally, my client is entitled to an equitable division of marital assets. We'll be seeking her fair share of the primary residence, brokerage accounts, and vehicles. If you have counsel, they can reach out directly. I thought a professional courtesy call might make things smoother, avoid unnecessary drama." His voice had that crisp arrogance that comes with cufflinks and a leased Tesla. I smiled into the mug. "Sure," I said calmly. "Let's keep it professional." His mistake wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. He spoke with that slow, patronizing patience lawyers reserve for people they think are old and confused. He thought I was some retired accountant, blindsided by divorce law and digital signatures. He didn't realize I'd met his senior partner 8 years ago at a charity gala, back when I was just Carla's quiet husband. We'd talked over cocktails about asset protection and risk mitigation. I'd listened, I'd taken notes. And then, over time, I built something far more elegant than either of them could imagine. I opened my files, dragged a document into a new email, and typed the subject line, "Whitman versus Whitman." I attached everything. The fully executed postnup, the asset distribution memo, the trust schematic, Clause 9b's activation log, the time-stamped evidence package, even the social media addendum. No greeting, no signature, just the data. Then I clicked to send. Silence stretched across the line. "Mr. Whitman," he finally said, voice tighter now. "You should read the attachment, Tyler." I could almost hear him frown. I will." Click. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just waited. 6 minutes later, the same number buzzed my phone again. I let it ring a few seconds before answering. "Mr. Whitman." The confidence was gone, replaced by that brittle politeness people use when they're realizing they're in trouble. I spoke with my client before reaching out. She said she wasn't aware of any active encumbrances on the marital estate. She didn't mention a postnuptial agreement or... "No," I said. "She wouldn't have. She never asked." He cleared his throat. "Look, this is going to require internal review. The trust, the clauses, the time-stamped post. This changes a lot of things." "Correct." A pause, then a nervous exhale. "My God," he whispered. "What did she tell you yesterday?" I smiled into the receiver. "Finally?" She told me the truth. Click. I leaned back, watching the tracking data on my screen. The email had been opened 5 times, forwarded twice, accessed once from a mobile device. Standard legal triage. I could picture the scene perfectly. Carla, still smug, sipping something with bubbles while her lawyer read the clause aloud, her jaw tightening with every sentence. her smile fading as she realized the boring man she'd ridiculed had already stripped the battlefield bare. She'd come to fight, but the weapons were gone. I never needed to win the war. I'd already welded the gates shut. Her lawyer was just the first casualty. A man who'd walked in thinking he was dealing with a clueless retiree and walked out holding a legal grenade missing its pin. The trust didn't just protect me, it erased the illusion that any of this would be fair. Carla thought she was the storyteller, that she could cast herself as the wounded wife and me as the naive husband. She forgot that I was the one editing the script. That same morning, she walked into the bank like she was claiming a prize. Fresh blowout, oversized sunglasses, an outfit calculated to look effortless. Not that it fooled anyone. She'd spent the night crying in her ex's apartment, but she'd covered it up well enough. Now she was humming to herself, convinced she was about to start her new chapter. The teller smiled warmly. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to withdraw from our joint savings," she said, every syllable dripping with practiced confidence, "and transfer part to a new checking account under the name Carla Whitman." The teller typed something, frowned, and hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see your name on the account." Carla's voice snapped sharp. "Excuse me? We've been with this bank for 15 years. Look it up again." The teller checked once more, her face tightening. "It's not that the account doesn't exist. It's that your name is no longer associated with it." Carla's expression froze into disbelief. "That's impossible." The teller glanced toward the manager's office. "I can call the branch manager if you'd like." "Yes," she said quickly. "Do that." Thomas, the branch manager, came out a few minutes later. Kind man, patient eyes. The sort of person who delivers bad news softly, like he's apologizing for it. "Mrs. Whitman," he said gently, "could we step into my office for a moment?" Inside the small room, she stood rigid, arms crossed, rehearsing outrage. "This is absurd. I need access." Thomas lifted a hand, opened a folder, and slid 2 notarized documents across the desk. "Please look at these." The first was a beneficiary reassignment form, executed automatically upon the breach of Clause 9 in a marital contract. The second was a notarized directive, signed 6 years ago by both of us, authorizing the transfer of full account ownership to the primary holder, me, in the event of spousal abandonment confirmed by legal counsel. Carla's jaw tightened. "This has to be a mistake." Thomas adjusted his glasses, calm as ever. "You signed this on April 14th, 2017. Right here, with a witness present, our notary. You remember her? You even joked about how ridiculous all this sounded." "Yes," she said quietly, staring at the paper as if it had just slapped her. Then her voice rose. "You can't do this. I need that money. I have bills, rent." "I'm sorry," Thomas said softly, his posture straight, his tone final. "But the accounts are no longer in your name. There's nothing you can access here." Carla's palms hit the desk, a sharp echo in the small office. "Then open his accounts." "I was his wife," Thomas slid the file closer. "The document says was. And that word changes everything." She stood so abruptly the chair screeched behind her. "You think you've won? You can't just leave me with nothing." But Thomas didn't flinch. He didn't look angry, only sad. He wasn't judging her. He pitied her. Security never needed to be called. She walked out on her own, no shouting, no scene. Just a dazed woman in designer sunglasses, moving through the lobby like someone who'd forgotten what gravity felt like. Outside, she sat in her car, fingers gripping the steering wheel, lungs struggling to find air. No money, no safety net, no one to blame but herself. Her name was on the exit clause, her timestamp on the betrayal, her signature beneath the words that had just erased her. She had walked in with arrogance, the belief that divorce was a strategy game with a guaranteed payout. She walked out with nothing, not a cent, not even a sense of control. Just the taste of panic rising like acid in her throat. By mid-afternoon, her illusions had started to crumble. The bank had blindsided her. Her lawyer had gone silent. Even Michelle, the ever-loyal echo chamber, suddenly had bad reception and a thing with her kids. Still, Carla told herself it was temporary, a minor setback, because she still had this, Her new beginning. The apartment Stephen had shown her weeks ago. Modern lines, soft lighting, no frame reminders of her past. Just candles, clean air, and Stephen's whiskey bottles lined up like trophies. She parked by the curb, still seething but rehearsing her comeback story in her head. She'd text Stephen. They'd order sushi, drink champagne, post something unbothered. Then she reached the door. A yellow notice was taped to it. Bold, cold. Lease agreement terminated. Vacate within 48 hours. Her pulse stuttered. She scanned the page, then froze. It wasn't from the landlord, not even the property management company. It was signed by O.M. Mark Properties, LLC, and below that, in fine print, Asset Manager, M. Whitman. Her brain stalled. She tore the notice off, fumbling for her phone. "This has to be a mistake," she snapped when the property manager answered. "I live here. I've been paying rent." "Ma'am," the voice replied carefully, "O.M. Properties has issued a contract termination under the discretionary clause. You're not the primary lessee." "What does that even mean?" "The primary lessee, Mr. Stephen Marlowe, has been notified. The termination came from the holding entity. All fees have been waived, but the unit is no longer available." "From who?" "I'm sorry, I can't disclose internal ownership." But she didn't need him to. Her eyes had already found the small watermark at the bottom corner. The same emblem I'd used on our estate documents. A stylized MW inside a square. Mark Whitman. The door behind her opened. Stephen stood there, half-eaten sandwich in hand, confusion on his face. "Babe? What's going on?" She shoved the notice toward him. "Did you know about this?" He scanned it lazily, then again, slower. "Wait, I thought the building was managed by Bizbridge? Are you saying your husband owns this place?" Carla didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Because she had never asked. She'd been too busy playing liberated woman to realize her freedom was financed inside walls I'd already paid for. Stephen rubbed his face. This is a nightmare. I signed a 1-year lease. They can't just..." "Yes, they can," she snapped. "Apparently he can." Stephen muttered something under his breath and retreated into the kitchen. Not to comfort her, not to fight for her, just to hide. That was his instinct when women raised their voices. Carla stood in the doorway, the notice trembling in her hand. Her fresh start, gone. Her safe space, revoked. Even her lover, retreating. She stepped outside, sat on the cold stone steps, and watched cars drift by. How many things, she wondered, that she thought she owned were actually mine? She thought she had escaped into a new life. She never realized she was still inside the perimeter, still on my battlefield. Every move she made had been mapped years ago, and now even the walls were turning against her. The call came just after midnight. I knew it would. "Dad," Holly said quietly, "I just talked to Mom. She's not okay." Her tone was cautious, not cold. That's how I knew she hadn't picked a side yet. "She said you froze her accounts, that she has nothing, that you've been planning this for years." I took a deep breath, not out of anger, but out of restraint. "Section 12, I said. "What?" "Section 12 of the post-nup, the clause about beneficiary exclusions in cases of deceit or abandonment." "Read it," a pause. "Can you send it to me?" "No need. It's in your Dropbox. Same folder as your student loan breakdown. File name, contingency_low_x_full.pdf. You've seen it before." More silence. Then softly, "I don't care about the money. I just need to know if she's telling the truth." "Then don't listen to either of us," I said. "Check her phone. Start with August. Look for the name Stephen." I could almost hear her heartbeat through the line. "You knew?" "I've known longer than she thinks." The line went dead. No goodbye. By morning, still nothing. No message. No confrontation. Just silence. Until 6:30 p.m. An email arrived from Holly's university account. Subject, I read it. No body text, just a PDF attached, screenshots, messages between Carla and Stephen. "I can't wait to be free of him. I keep the prenup in the guest room drawer. If he dies, everything goes to Holly, which is fine. She'll share with me anyway. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She already had. Carla must have felt the silence before she understood it. 3 missed calls to Holly, then 5, then 9. Finally, a voicemail. Honey, he's manipulating you. He's brainwashing you. You don't understand. And that was it. That was what broke her. Not the bank, not the apartment, not even the trust. It was losing the one person she believed would always stay neutral. Carla's greatest delusion wasn't thinking I would fold. It was believing her daughter would. She thought Holly was too soft, too young to choose sides, but she underestimated what truth does to a person once they've seen it. Holly didn't call again. She didn't yell. She didn't take anyone's side publicly. She just changed her voicemail. Hi, you've reached H. Whitman. Leave a message, not Jolly, not Holly, not the cutesy nickname Carla used when she was daydreaming about reinventing herself and introducing Stephen as your future stepdad. Just H. Whitman. When the choice came between shared blood and lived truth, Holly didn't hesitate. She didn't choose the mother who told fairy tales over sushi. She chose the father who never lied. Not about his flaws, not about his silence, not even about what he was capable of. In the end, Carla didn't just lose a husband. She lost her witness, and without one, her story stopped mattering. Stephen Marlowe had always fancied himself a charmer, the kind of man who could walk into a room, flash a smile, and walk out with something that didn't belong to him. Sometimes that was a job, sometimes a woman, occasionally someone's dignity. He hadn't changed much since college. New veneers, tighter shirts, an Audi that thought it was smarter than he was, but underneath, same man, same bluff. He thought he'd won when Carla came back into his life. You're glowing, he told her that first weekend. He never deserved you, and she had soaked it up like a starving houseplant finally getting water. She told him I was dull, predictable. Mark the Meek, she called me. She said I'd probably cry in the shower for a few weeks, then hand her the passwords and beg for closure. Stephen had laughed, kissed her, believed every word, because that's what men like him do. They confuse confidence with truth. Until the knock came. A man in a black polo, clipboard in hand. Stephen Marlowe? Yeah? You've been served. A thick cream envelope. Real ink, no fanfare. Plaintiff, Mark Whitman. Claim, intentional interference with a trust asset structure. Stephen frowned, scanning the pages. The words blurred. Unjust enrichment, tortious interference, fraud, in bold. 3 exhibits. The first, a screenshot of that champagne photo Carla had proudly posted. The one he'd framed in his head as victory. The second, a transcript of their text messages time-stamped weeks before the legal separation. The third, the lease to the apartment, signed by Stephen, beneath a forged checkbox claiming Carla had joint ownership of the property. And that was the trap. She'd signed where she had no right to sign, which meant Stephen had lived in, benefited from, and concealed the use of a marital asset under false pretenses. His face went pale. He called Carla. No answer. He texted, "What the hell is this lawsuit? You said everything was joint. You said you had it handled." Typing bubble. Then nothing, because she didn't have it handled. She never did. He believed her because she was beautiful and angry. A dangerous combination for any man who's lived his life mistaking confidence for competence. By midnight, he was sitting across from his own lawyer. Older, sharper, with that quiet look that says, "You're already cooked." She said it was hers, Stephen mumbled. "I didn't think I needed to." The lawyer cut him off. "This isn't heartbreak, son. This is fiduciary fraud." Stephen swallowed hard. "Can I just apologize?" "Settle? You can try," the lawyer said. "But if this isn't about money, if they're setting a precedent, you're in for a long ride." That's when he understood. This wasn't about revenge or payout. It was about ensuring no man ever felt safe stealing another man's life and assuming he'd get to keep it. Stephen had never been the real prize. He was the instrument. And now the blade had turned. Carla requested a meeting, her last act of control. "Tell him I want to see him," she wrote to my lawyer. "He owes me." That word again, owes. as if 15 years of covering her debts, protecting her credit, and cleaning up her brother's disasters were just a down payment. Still, I said yes, because I finally understood. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about her needing an audience. We met in a neutral office downtown. 3rd floor, long walnut table, glass walls. Her lawyer didn't show. He'd already recused himself after realizing the iceberg was bigger than he could navigate. I arrived 5 minutes early. She came 9 minutes late. Sunglasses, red lipstick, that same jacket she wore whenever she wanted to pretend she was composed. "Nice room," she said, sitting down. No greeting. I slid the folder across the table. She didn't touch it. "What's this?" "Your life," I said. "On paper." She opened it, expecting noise. Found silence. Exhibit A. The champagne photo. Time-stamped. Geolocated. Exhibit B. Recovered texts from her cloud backup. The jokes about breaking Mark slowly. Exhibit C. The audio from her call with Michelle. Her own words, "I'll make him think I'm still undecided. Just long enough to cash out." Her hand froze. "You recorded me?" "No," I said. "Michelle did. She thought she was the CEO of your little operation. Turns out betrayal doesn't come with loyalty points." Her color drained. Then she saw the highlight. Section 14, B. Any attempt to manipulate or deceive the grantor for financial gain results in total forfeiture of all marital or trust claims. She read it 3 times before whispering, "This is insane." "No," I said. "It's notarized. You can't just erase me like this." "I didn't erase you," I said. "You wrote yourself out. I just closed the book." "You think this makes you strong?" "No," I said. "It makes me free." She flipped through the remaining pages. Automatic transfers, liquidation triggers, clawback clauses. Things she'd never cared to learn about while she was too busy calling our marriage a cage. "You hid this from me," she hissed. "You never looked," I said simply. "You were too busy chasing what you thought you deserved to see what was already protected." She shut the folder, trembling. This wasn't love. I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I said quietly. "But I love the law." For the first time, she had no comeback, no tears, no performance, just silence, the kind that feels like the air right after a gavel falls. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. "I hope you're proud of this." "I am," I said. She opened the door, paused, almost said something, then walked out. No goodbye, no final act, just the echo of heels fading down a hallway she didn't own. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No courier, no signature required. Just a quiet white packet dropped in her mailbox like any other piece of suburban junk. She didn't notice it until late afternoon. Wrapped in an oversized cardigan, mascara smudged, she tore it open with the indifference of someone expecting more paperwork. Inside were only 2 documents. Notification of irrevocable dissolution of private marital trust authority. Executed transfer of nullified marital claims. No judge's seal, no court docket, no family court stamp. Because this wasn't court business, this was administration. Under the trust framework, once she breached clauses 9 and 14, dissolution was automatic. No hearings, no settlements, no appeals. The end had been written into the beginning. She read the cover letter over and over, her hands shaking. One line stood out. "Effective as of the moment you told me you never loved me." No threats, no rage, just a time-stamped truth. Carla stood in the kitchen of what used to be her fresh start. The champagne, the laughter, the posts, all of it had evaporated. Stephen had moved out weeks ago, crawling back to his ex-wife, where at least the drama came with a custody agreement and a shared car payment. Michelle had stopped answering calls. Holly had gone silent. Even the apartment was gone, repossessed quietly by OMK Holdings. She sat at the chipped table, refolding the papers as if they might change if she blinked hard enough. Then she picked up her phone. Tyler Preston, her lawyer. Last number dialed, but there was no ring, no voicemail, because even he was done. No one wants to stand in court holding an empty briefcase for a client who forged her own undoing. Out of habit, she opened her photo gallery, scrolled back to the picture of her and Stephen. Champagne glasses raised, sunlight catching the bubbles. The same photo that started it all. She hovered over delete, then stopped. Because that picture was the trigger. The moment she traded substance for spectacle. And you don't delete a tombstone. The apartment was silent. Just the hum of the refrigerator, a clock ticking too loud. She looked down at the embossed seal one last time. It was real, final, not the end of a marriage, the end of her narrative. She had spent years pretending I was just a footnote in her story. She never realized I was the final editor.